So today's topic is focusing on Cleopatra's legacy and whether or not she was the greatest female leader of Egypt.
Cleopatra is certainly one of Egypt's better-known pharaohs, and for a good reason. I thought she was a seductive badass. Her beauty brought men to their knees. That is some kind of power.
I didn't really like that about her. It makes her seem like a hoe. Her biggest accomplishments seem to be her sexual affairs with powerful men.
I don't think that, but rather that she was an opportunist. She seized any opportunity that was placed in front of her, and that just happened to be two men.
I don't think she was an opportunist. I think she was a moral seductress who used love and sex as a political tool.
She used her beauty, sexuality, and powers of persuasion to attract two of the world's most powerful men to keep her country free of complete Roman control.
She was just doing what she thought was necessary for her country.
Although, sometimes you could say that she was doing overkill rather than just what was necessary. For example, in order to solidify her grasp on the throne, she persuaded Antony to have her half-sister Aristine to be executed.
Although one could argue that such ruthlessness was not only a common feature of Egyptian politics in Cleopatra's day, but rather it was necessary to ensure her own survival and that of her son.
She was ensuring that her family, like her children and not all her sisters and stuff, would get the throne.
Okay. Aristine is her family, not just her children. She didn't have to kill her sister. She just wanted to get her out of the way so she could always have the throne. Cleopatra, being a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a dynasty of Macedonian origin, ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great's death. Her family ruled Egypt for more than 100 years before her birth in 69 BC. The Ptolemies refused to speak Egyptian, and that created a big barrier between them and their people. Her family's rule let the Egyptian economy sink. It didn't help when her father, Ptolemy the 12th, Aleuts, died and left the empire to an 8-year-old Cleopatra and a 10-year-old Ptolemy the 13th. The two married, even though they were brother and sister, because it was custom in the time. Egypt struggled with their economy in the years to follow that included floods, and famine.
Although Cleopatra was young, being only 18, which actually wouldn't have been that young back in those times, but she did have previous experience. She helped her father in the last few years of his rule with talking to foreign leaders, as she knew many languages. She essentially became a co-ruler with her father, even though she had two older sisters, which means she must have been doing a good job if her father wanted her to rule instead of her older sisters.
Another good thing about Cleopatra, as you mentioned, was that she could speak many languages. She was the first person in her family for over 300 years to learn Egyptian and Greek, despite being Macedonian.
She was highly educated. She studied philosophy and international relations. Her mind was very impressive.
In her lifetime, she made several contributions to her empire and proved herself as an independent ruler determined to fight for her country in a world dominated by men.
And she proved herself as just as an effective leader as the males before her.
She did try to be very independent, despite her using her relationships with Caesar and Antony. When her brother got jealous of her power and forced her to go to Syria, she found her way back to the throne by doing what was necessary. When Caesar came to Egypt seeking promised money and assistance from her father before, she rolled herself up in a carpet and smuggled herself into Alexandria to meet with him. There, she convinced him to help her get rid of her husband/brother, returning her to her sole leadership.
So something that I thought was very important about her was that she did sacrifice her personal life to help make Egypt one of the most powerful countries, even though it was Roman influenced. She improves the role of women in society, proving that men are not the only ones who can run a country for years. She also proved that women could be married to men and still have their own thing going on. They weren't just available as housewives and as objects for men to use when they wanted to. She was just as important as the one she was married to. She became a role model.
So it's clear Cleopatra had a very eventful life. Let's talk about how it all ended.
Well, Cleopatra ended up taking her own life. After Antony was misinformed that Cleopatra was dead, he killed himself. Cleopatra was able to get to him in time for him to die in her arms. She then began to plan her own death. She had a large banquet and then killed herself, possibly by the means of an asp, which is a poisonous Egyptian serpent and a symbol of divine royalty. Some argue that she killed herself because she was so devastated by Mark Antony's death, but others suggest that she committed suicide rather than fall to Rome.
When she committed suicide, she left all of her problems on others. She just kind of left her children after their father had killed themselves, and she left her people. They got her son killed because she left him to Octavian.
I think she did it because, like, if you ignore the fact that she had children, she was trying to look after herself. And you know what? She had been so much as a female leader. She'd been through so much as a female leader, and I think that that's got to have an impact on her mental stability.
If you can't handle the throne being a female leader, then don't have one.
What was she supposed to do?
Not kill her brother and sister or plot to kill them.
Okay, I don't condone the killing her sister thing because her sister didn't really do anything, but like her brother banned her to Syria.
Okay. Her brother did not even plot to kill her. He banished her because he understands that she's his family and you don't kill your family, but he needed to send her away. Cleopatra had no comprehension of what family means.
Cleopatra had a beautiful family with Caesar and Antony, and she had 4 kids in total. She was a good leader, and she was looking out for her kids first instead of her brother, who banished her anyway. If he wanted to have the throne on his own, he could have just talked to her about it. He should have known she was plotting something.
I don't really think he would have been able to just talk to her about it because I highly doubt Cleopatra would have been just willing to give up the throne.
Cleopatra did not even care about her children. After she committed suicide, leaving all her children without parents, her son, Little Caesar, was assassinated, and her only daughter was forced into Octavian's care, who forced her to marry King Juba, and she was forced away from her family to live with this guy. Cleopatra was selfish at the best of times, and she was not looking out for her children. She was looking out for herself.
Okay, well that's all the time we have for today. So to conclude, what are the final statements we have about Cleopatra?
Well, I don't think she was the greatest female ruler of Egypt. She was selfish and dirty.
I think she was an intelligent woman who was very persuasive, which is a good leadership skill. She did her best in the time where male leaders dominated.
I have to agree with you. She did the best she could in her time, and she did what she thought was necessary for her country. I think she was a pretty good ruler.